This weekend, 1,200 troops will march through the city of Darwin to mark the return of soldiers from operations in Afghanistan, Iraq and East Timor. Most of them have just completed a 9-month deployment in southern Afghanistan, and it appears a growing number of them are deciding they've had enough of being sent overseas. Official figures show an increase in the number of soldiers leaving the army, but the federal government is happy with retention rates. Michael Coggan reports.
Once the eulogy's been completed, the prayer for the fallen will be done by Corporal Young.
Soldiers from the Darwin-based 1st Brigade are rehearsing a memorial service to bid an official farewell to comrades killed in Afghanistan. Combat engineer Lance Corporal David Myers lost his colleagues, Corporal Richard Atkinson and Sapper Jamie Larkham, in separate attacks in February. Their names are being added to a permanent memorial at Robertson Barracks.
For the regiment, definitely, it's to recognise that they've lost friends overseas. It is important to them. It's important to the guys that were close to the people that died overseas, to be able to recognise it, and publicly so.
Quick! March!
Corporal Myers finds it difficult to talk about the impact the deaths have had on him personally. But Troop Sergeant Ben King has no doubt losing colleagues caused his men to question why they were in Afghanistan.
It definitely raised questions with the blokes about what they were doing and whether it was worth it and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, the blokes continued on and they did it for each other.
But the threat of being killed isn't the only factor playing on the minds of the soldiers who spent up to 9 months serving with Mentoring Task Force 2 in the Tarancot region. Deployment fatigue also appears to be taking a toll.
I've done a couple of Timors, a couple of Iraqs, and this is my second time here. My wife's, she ain't going. She's had enough.
For me, I'm transferring to reserves. I need a break. I'm going to go back to civilian life for a while.
A few people I know are transferring to different corps, transferring to reserves. A couple of people put in their discharges. But we're all going back to 5 hours to start with.
It's been a long 7 or 8 months for the soldiers deployed here from Darwin. Most of the soldiers I've spoken to say it's been the highlight of their career, but about a third of them have already submitted their discharge papers or are considering leaving the Defence Force. Department of Defence figures show 42 personnel deployed as part of MTF2 have applied to be discharged, representing less than 5% of the task force. But official figures up to the end of the financial year show the rolling separation rate for the 30,000 permanent Australian Army employees has increased by 1.4%.
It's not surprising, given the tempo of operations and the number of deployments some of our people are being sent on these days. I think we've got to understand that the ADF level of operational involvement is as high as we have seen it in living memory almost.
While serving in Afghanistan, Lance Corporal Matthew Clark told me he had submitted his discharge papers and some of his friends were doing the same. But the Minister for Defence Personnel says the official number of voluntary discharges from the Darwin-based 1st Brigade isn't showing a significant increase.
We're not seeing huge numbers of people separate following deployments. There are only 255 separations from one brigade during 2010-11. That's approximately 6.5%. The rolling separation rate for the permanent ADF was 7.9%. So we've got lower separation in the deployed force than we have overall.
But Australia's peak Defence Welfare Organisation says deployment fatigue is a growing problem not yet reflected in the official figures.
We can expect that the stresses brought about by the multiple deployments and the multiple separations from families on exercises and courses in between those deployments is going to have a compounding effect, and I would expect the separation rate will increase.
Regardless of the pressures of high-tempo deployments, the Darwin-based soldiers are upbeat and proud of the work they've done to improve the lives of people in Afghanistan.
We saw a huge difference from where we started to where we finished. I mean, we built another 2 patrol bases within the Mirabad Valley.
But for now, the most important thing for these soldiers is taking the time to stop and remember their friends who didn't make it home.
For the blokes that were over there doing the job with Acker and Larks, it's a huge thing. I mean, you know, to think that those guys are over there so young, doing the job that they were doing, it's something that we need to, we don't ever really want to forget.